Hello, and welcome to this week's Charity Digital News webinar. My name is Chris Hall. I'm the marketing manager here at Charity Digital News. I'm standing in for our usual host and CEO, Jonathan Chevalier. To those of you who've joined us before, it's great to have you back. And to our first-time listeners, we hope today's session will be the first of many with the Charity Digital community. For our first-timers, here's a quick overview of what we do at Charity Digital News. Charity Digital News is part of Tech Trust, a charity focused on helping other charities to maximise their impact through the use of digital technology. As part of our offerings, we have saved charities over £225 million through our TT Exchange programme. It's a programme that gives charities access to discount and donated tech products like Microsoft Office, Sage, Adobe, and much more. We also have our own white-labelled email platform, TT Mail, that we offer to charities at a heavily discounted rate. That's based on the .mailer technology and can serve as a great alternative to solving some of the pain points of MailChimp and other email marketing platforms. On top of that, we host Charity Digital Jobs, a recruitment platform that connects charities to top digital candidates looking for their next role. And of course, there's Charity Digital News, a web-based platform that aims to educate and inspire charities to adopt digital tech through thought leadership, and community content. This week, we're rounding off our series of digital leadership webinars with Penny Power. Penny is an entrepreneur who specializes in working with smaller organizations to help them become more digital. She's had a 25-year career in digital technology, including founding eCademy, the UK's first social network for businesses and a forerunner of LinkedIn. She also founded the Digital Youth Academy, which helped young people get digital jobs through apprenticeships. Penny's outstanding work saw her awarded an OBE for her commitment to entrepreneurship and social digital development, and today she joins us to discuss digital leadership for the non-technical leaders. As always, we'll be running a Q&A segment at the end of this session, and if you wish to raise a question, you can do so by hitting the Q&A button on screen and submit it there. We'll also be making a recording of the webinar available on the Charity Digital News website, and we'll share this with you and other resources via email within the next week or so. So that's enough from me for now. Without further ado, let's welcome Penny. Penny, why don't you start by running through what you'll be deep diving with us here today?
Hi, wonderful to be here, Chris. Can I check that you can all hear me okay?
Yes.
That's fantastic. So that was a wonderful introduction to what you do. So today I've got an agenda. I think we're going to talk for about 30 minutes and then we're going to look at the Q&A, and I'm hoping some good interaction. I'm really impressed with about 40 people have now taken the questionnaire that we had, Amar, the Identify, Modify and Adapt, and I'm going to explain why that was important. So what I'm going to talk about throughout this morning is really about how do we help people who are not inclined towards the digital technology? How do we help them and motivate them to really want to onboard it into their lives? And I think a lot of people have gone through a huge shift in today's economy for many, many reasons. We'll keep away from some of the B word, but we'll, if we focus on the digital, it's been really disruptive. And whether we like it or not, it's really a have-to skill now in order to engage and be productive. So I thought I'd start off by saying why I believe charities are really important, and the two charities that I support, and explain why. And then I want to talk about why it's so important that you do share your story with others. Look at some of the styles of communication online and how they work and how that works by individual. Look at some of the ways that we learn new habits that maybe some people will be listening today and thinking, oh, I'm really not keen to learn this, but I'm either being told I need to listen to this webinar or I've got this itch that I know I've got to ultimately scratch. And look at what are the really key digital skills, the critical ones that we have now that we need to take on board into our lives. We all have different communication styles, different drivers for why we communicate and why we do what we do. And I want to look at that and look at how it will help if you're building a team as a charity. It may be a team of volunteers, or you may be fortunate enough to have some people that you can employ and direct. How do you create the right roles within that team? how do you improve your digital productivity and your communication, and look at digital building of brands in order to build your funds. So it's quite a packed agenda. I'm going to crack straight on because the Q&A is going to be important, I feel, and I know we're collecting that. So if everybody would like to put any notes in, I know Chris will be picking those up. So why does the charity mean so much to me? So actually, way back, my first feeling of self-esteem came when I was 10 years old. I was quite isolated in a village, and I was the youngest of 4 children. None of them were still at home. But I was fortunate that a family moved next door, and it was with a boy who was only 4, but he was highly cerebral palsic. So he had massive spasms in his arms. He was in a wheelchair. And he became my life. I absolutely loved coming back from school, running down to see Toby. And he gave me so much. And I was often being massively thanked by his parents for coming in. But I could never understand as a child why they'd do that, because I felt I got so much from his bright smile and the love that he gave me and the fact that he made me feel so validated. And it really was where I learned the power of being kind to others. And so I've always led my life thinking that if you actually do anything, I think that saying, there's no such thing as a selfless act, is so true. You get back so much. But we had some very sad things happen in our family. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who have created charities because of personal experience. And the first one gave rise to Victoria's Promise. Victoria's Promise is a charity started by my sister and her son and my late niece's husband. Victoria was my niece. At 28 and a half, she got married. We had an extremely exciting wedding in the garden of my parents' house in December the 1st, 2013. And then in the November 2013, November the following year, she got diagnosed with a very, very acute cancer and died 8 weeks later. And she asked her mother and her brother, her father had died the previous year to cancer, to follow through a promise that she wanted to make but was unable to, which was to support young women through their journey of finding out they have cancer, a unique set of experiences that a young woman has. About 2 years after that, my daughter, who had just graduated and gone to university, taken her through doing a law degree, and finally got her first job in London as a graduate, and left home and was following through that dream that she'd had since she'd watched Friends as a 10-year-old, where she was now living with friends in London. And she took her first holiday in the March 3 years ago, it was actually 3 years ago this month, and went skiing. And unfortunately on her 3rd day was abducted in a car and raped. And we then discovered that it was a 14-month waiting list for support. And really you need first aid support, immediate support. We were very fortunate. We had resources and we were able to give her a loving family. But what we've discovered since is how few people have access to that, and how so many young women and men live in shame where they're not the ones that should be holding the shame. So those are the 2 charities we support as a family, and they mean a lot to us. And I think that's the thing. Telling your story is so critical. And I think we sometimes lose sight when we get into the tasks of our work about how important our story is to tell over and over again, the founding story, the emotion of it, and then the continual stories of the people that we support. So Victoria's Promise had a ball last weekend. And in that ball, where they raise usually around about £70,000, we heard the stories of the young women, and we cried our tears of joy to see the way they'd been supported, and our tears of sadness when we saw a man who had lost his wife stand up and talk about how that charity had helped them. These stories matter. And I had an experience once when I was talking to some young people at UCL about entrepreneurship. And at the end of this event of about 300 students at UCL doing their degrees, a gorgeous young man walked up to me and said, I've been given the task of running the charity bucket this year. And 4 times a year, they were licensed to be able to stand on some corners in London and shake a bucket and raise money for a chosen charity. And he brought out on his laptop with great excitement all this incredible information about the process behind it, how he was running the charity, the people that he was trying to get to be volunteers, the dates and times they would stand there. And he said he's just having a terrible time recruiting the volunteers. And I asked him, what charity are you actually raising money for? And he said, oh, I've decided once I know how much we've raised, I'll then allot it to a charity. And what he had really lost sight of is the reason people do things, the reason people give up their time, the reason people want to put money into a charity. It's not about the task, it's really about the emotion and the dream that we all have of improving other people's lives. So we have to make sure that we don't focus too much on the tasks, although the tasks and the processes behind everything is so critical to keep us productive. There's a wonderful saying in a book called The Little Prince, which says, if you wish to build a ship, don't divide the men into teams and send them to the forest to cut wood. Instead, teach them to long for the vast and endless sea. It'd be much easier to build a ship if people could understand where they were heading to. So the tasks are important, but we have to make sure people understand where they're going to. So I wanted to start off, although this sounds like, well, what's this got to do with digital technology? It's really important that we understand our team that we have around us, whether it's ourselves or the people, the volunteers, and maybe the employees that we have, that we understand their communication drivers, what excites them, what drives them. And many of you will have heard of Carl Jung's 16 personality types, and you may have done Myers-Briggs or DISC or many of the other commercial ways that you can have a look at some self-awareness of yourself or look at your team to see and learn more about yourself. Well, the one I use is called Amar, and some of you, in fact, about 40 of you have now taken it, and you'll have discovered whether you're a high yellow or a high blue or a high red or a high green. Now, this works on the principle of communication styles. Have you got an assertive communication style or an unassertive one? Are you open or are you closed and guarded? Now, of course, none of these are wrong. None of it is wrong at all. There isn't a right personality or wrong personality, but there is a personality type that suits different things in their lives that makes them feel excited and set on fire. And the reason I'm showing you this is because we're going to start looking at what the roles are within an organization, the tasks are that need to be done, and what is the best personality for that. And therefore, how would you apply that to encouraging them to use digital technology, whether it's for productivity or for engaging with the audience that you're wanting to raise funds from. So you've all taken that. And if we look at this to the left-hand side of your screen, I've just brought up that the left-hand side of people, the people who are more closed or guarded, are more task-orientated. They get great joy in ticking off tasks, of achieving tasks, of making sure things get done. When you go to the other side, the more open people, they tend to be more people-orientated. They get their energy and their enjoyment and will always prioritize spending time around people. Task-driven people need time on the task. They need to go to bed feeling they achieved stuff and ticked stuff off. People-orientated people need the energy of people to feel validated. Now, the reason it's called high red, high yellow, high green, high blue is because obviously we all have different aspects of ourselves that we can apply. And so we're not always going to be just one type, but this is the way we tend to lean. To the top of it, where I've just brought up that sign saying faster, people who are assertive tend to want things to be done a bit faster. They may be a little bit more impatient. They get bored easily. They're wanting to get things done really fast. Whereas people to the bottom end of the screen, the people who are more unassertive, whilst they can work fast and productively, they are more cautious. They want facts and figure and time to consider things. They want to work slowly, maybe deeper on a subject in order to feel that they're performing. So if I bring up the different colors, of the 38 to 40 people that took this, 6 people in this webinar so far that have taken it are high red. That means they're assertive and closed. That means they're very task driven. They get impatient and they want to get things done. These sorts of people are brilliant at leading because they're great at creating the productivity around a business, looking at what the results of the business are. They're success driven. They want to win. They want to look at the numbers. They want to be highly successful. If we now look at the yellow on the other side, again, this is an assertive person, but they're more people focused. These people love creativity. They love people. They love lots of people. They are the sort of people that might be quite charismatic when they walk into the room. They really can spread the word of something incredibly strongly. Then if we look at down at the bottom left-hand corner, the closed, guarded person. So there are 11 of these had taken the test. Oh, and I meant to say 13 people were yellow in the group of people so far. So 6 reds, 13 yellows, and here we have 11 greens. Now the greens are very powerful in an organization because they're closed and guarded, which means they are more cautious, and unassertive, which means they might be quite quiet. And these people tend to enjoy doing detailed tasks very thoroughly, and they have a lot of knowledge. So they might be the people who enjoy looking at the numbers in an organization, working out the processes, dealing with how to code a website, the sort of stuff that would drive a high yellow completely bonkers because it's just not people orientated enough. They want to be out there making a noise, getting things done. The high yellow wants to get things done on their own, in quiet, cautiously, carefully. They might be doing the legal contracts. They might be doing the accounts. They might be doing the website, stuff that's so important to the foundations and regularity and strength of a charity. And then here's the high blues, open and unassertive, very passionate people, people orientated, but cautious. These people love depth of conversation. These are the people that really deeply feel empathy and pain and love and passion. And so far in the group of people that we had that have signed up, 8 people here are the high blues. These are the people that say things like, I really want to help. I really want to make a difference. Now, it doesn't mean the high reds, high yellows, and high greens don't want to, but the high yellows really dedicate themselves to the communication of that. They're the sort of people that would happily get on a phone call and listen and listen and listen and feel deep pain about what these people are going through. Their empathy levels are very high. So if we follow on through this now a bit faster, this is really important when you're recruiting your team and delegating what needs to be done, because as I've said, the reds want to drive the business, delegate, focus on the results, take charge, make quick decisions, and they like winning. The yellows like to create excitement, share ideas and dreams, be enthusiastic and motivated. They inspire and persuade people. The greens, they like facts, numbers, the website, focus on these, like logic. They can work alone. And the blues, community managers, fantastic community managers, fantastic depth of impact that they like to have. They really want to be helpful. So listen to the words in your team. The reds will use the word, what do we need to do? What needs to be done? The yellows will say, who's going to do this? The greens will say, how are we going to do it? And the blues are the why people. So if you look at the roles by color, we said that task people are very much into productivity tools, efficiency and analysis. Whereas the people on the open side of it, the yellows and the blues, they're very much around people branding, branding the charity, marketing the charity. Now, there's a learning journey to any new habit. And this seminar, now we know what personality types we're working with, is about how would you adopt digital into your organization. Now, any learning journey follows this path. The first bit is, I'm unconsciously incompetent. I really don't care that I don't know this subject. That would be like telling my 5-year-old when I'm driving a car to watch how I drive, look at the signs on the road and understand how the gears work. They do not care. But tell a 17-year-old to do it, they're desperate to run out and get their L plates because they've become consciously incompetent. They want to learn. So what we need to do is find out in your organization who is consciously incompetent. They want to learn. They're already motivated. They just need to go on a journey with you. And isolate that down to what color are they? What would they want to do? Do they want to learn productivity tools that's going to make your charity more productive? Or do they want to learn engagement, relationship tools like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, run events, Eventbrite? Once they start climbing up that line of their learning journey, they become consciously competent. You've given them the skills. You've isolated the right job to the right person and identified what digital skill they need to have, and they're starting to learn it because they're motivated and they see why, and it matches their temperament. The joy comes when they become unconsciously competent. That's the habit. That's the dangerous thing in driving. When your kids have got in the car and they've found where they are and they've been listening to music and chatting to their friends, and they've not even had to think about how to drive the car because it's a habit. It only happens by practice, practice, practice. So that's when we get to habit, and it's no effort. But we have to empathize with people and understand they've got to go through a journey, and we have to help that through that journey. And the more that you adopt the right digital technology to match the right type of personality and temperament, the more that journey will be a success and a joy. So let's look at the critical digital skills that are needed in the organization. Well, we've talked about productivity, internal efficiencies, and motivation as a team in order to get tasks done. And then the other digital skills we need is how do we brand and market, get known, liked, and followed? How do we engage, excite, and build the funds that we need in our organization? So if we remember the roles by color again, what would be the right tools for them? What would be right for the high red, who likes to get things done, to lead, to project manage, to ensure that everybody's working towards the same winning formula? What would be the right tool for the high yellow, who wants to run events, wants to make a noise? What about the green, that likes to work away studiously, thoroughly making sure that you dot the T's and cross the T's and dot the I's, and make sure that the regulation and all of the things inside the organization that are the founding bricks of the organization work? And what would be the right tools for the blue? So what are the productivity tools? If you're wanting your reds and greens to look at the productivity and the real foundation of it, you want to look at things like team project managing tools like Trello or Slack, or Microsoft have their own productivity tool, project it's called. Accountancy tools like Xero and QuickBooks. Some of you may have heard that they've now got Making Tax Digital, where we have to make our returns to HMRC. We need to have all of our ability to invoice and follow our expenses and submit them to HMRC digitally. That would be a great job for a high green to look after. Don't give that job to a high yellow. Possibly at a push, a high blue wouldn't mind it, but they don't mind anything because they just want to keep you happy. And then what about this as a productivity tool? What about setting up a WhatsApp group for all your volunteers and teams? The joy of that is that instant validation, where somebody who has just talked about your charity in a supermarket queue and is excited that somebody's just agreed to do some leaflet drops or come to an event, or they've sold a ticket. What about them being immediately able to drop that into your WhatsApp group and share it with them at that moment when they're excited and get that praise back from the team? Don't keep these things for a monthly meeting when a lot of those things that would have kept them motivated along the line would have really excited them. Sharing how your team is doing on a WhatsApp group is so powerful. I use it in our family. We've got 5 of us. We're all adults now, all finding our own way through life. And every day, at least 10 times a day, there's little snippets that come in from the family. It's so powerful. Create a WhatsApp group for your charity that will increase productivity by increasing motivation. So now let's look at the building brands part of it. This is a funnel. Many people will be familiar with funnels in sales and marketing. So in sales, it's about suspect, prospect, customer. How do you find people to sell to or bring in to build the funds? So if we now look at the yellows and the blues, the people are going to build your funds by being out there with the people and telling your story. How does your brand get known? How does your brand get liked, followed, and then go into the sales funnel so they can spend money with you? So getting known is about your big brand story, sharing your story across Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. Like Me is about seeing the people that like and share and comment on your content and engaging back with them, because what they've done is they've validated you. They've said they like you. They are your closest target towards that sales funnel. And then build your community. Hashtags on Twitter, build community. Use a way to track your hashtags whenever it's used. Find a unique hashtag for your charity on Twitter, so you will be familiar with them. Comic Relief 2019, powerful hashtag. What would your hashtag be that you could click on? And when anybody mentions anything, people can see your story out there. Build your community on Facebook. That would be a great way to do it. Maybe your volunteers and the volunteers' friends might like to be in a Facebook group and hear how things are going, hear how the marathon run has gone, follow something that's going on Facebook Live. Or LinkedIn, a LinkedIn group for maybe some of your fundraisers who are going out into the corporates. So then when you get to that part of the funnel, you're really starting to get the close people who are closest to your sales funnel. So use Twitter and Facebook particularly to gather up your tribe and communicate and serve them. The hashtags for the noise and the brand. What's the right hashtag for your funding? Communities for engagement. I've got a community called the Business Cafe, which is for small businesses that I support, particularly around their emotional and mental health. Anybody's welcome to join that if they want support. It's not easy running these things on your own or in small groups. So in summary, as we go towards the Q&A, we've looked at how important it is to tell your story and make a noise. We've looked at styles of communication that could impact the success of that role, how to help your team to feel more valued and love their job, and the new skills that team might have. We've looked at what are the critical digital skills, productivity tools like Trello or other ones that will be relevant to your particular charity. And today what we can do is trigger these thoughts. But I know that Tech Trust want to be able to provide you with other webinars that are going to help you to deep dive and learn these. So communicate that back to them if there's particular ones you would like to learn. Productivity is going to increase your efficiency, and building brand will build your funds. Twitter and Facebook as a tool you can use that very well. So that's the Q&A. I think we might be considering in the future, and I put this on here, a survey, but please do feedback today now in the Q&A, what sort of tools you would like to learn and any other questions that you might have. And I've really enjoyed talking to you all. Thank you very much, but I'm here now for the Q&A.
Thank you, Penny, for that great insight into how to become a very efficient digital leader using technology. And I just want to say, on behalf of everybody, deepest sympathy for what you and your family have had to endure. But it's great to see the support mechanisms that you've put in place, not only for your own family, but everybody else out there as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, we're going to move over into some questions now. So if any of our listeners do have any, please feel free to hit the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen and add some in. But while they flood in, I've got a few of my own that we can kind of dig into.
Chris, is it going to be very off-putting if I have them up on the screen as well, like this?
No, that's fine.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's no problem at all.
Thank you very much. That helps me to see it.
Anything to help. So as I'm getting familiar with the other questions, I'll just start with this one. So as a digital leader in the charity space, you've covered a lot throughout your presentation, but where would be the best place to start when looking to use digital tech to grow brands and improve your operations, improve productivity, and inevitably be more efficient as a charity? Where's the best place to start?
Well, I think if it depends on where you are in the journey and your own capabilities. I think we have a fantastic millennial generation that feel very comfortable with things like Facebook and Twitter and possibly not so much LinkedIn, but they do understand how to use these tools and they adopt them very easily. So I would start off actually brainstorming with the team, find out what I'm a color they are, because I think that really is important. Find out what they enjoy. And on that learning journey, really ask them to say whether or not they are willing to go on a learning journey. And then when you sort of create a matrix of the color and what they are willing to learn, I would suggest that you then start to get the skills. Now, every single town has a I love something on Facebook. I love Farnham, I love Luton, I love Glasgow. This is a group which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that I'm talking to now. If you were to go in there and say that we're looking for somebody who can help us learn these tools, I am sure people would volunteer their time to show you how to use them. Equally, I think that, Chris, I think we talked about, I think you might be running some webinars with some experts. So I think that feedback is really important to you about what particular tools, because I sort of act as a torchbearer on this now. You know, I suppose I used to be a very strong practitioner and be able to talk very deep dive into the products. But now, for me, it's really about triggering the motivation and giving that overall context. And I think you need to find the experts that love that. So, I mean, I delegate things like my scheduling to somebody who understands Hootsuite, and they schedule all my content through Hootsuite that I've created over the last year through articles and blogs and tweets and things that I've done. They schedule it and put it out. I don't have the time or the desire to learn how to use Hootsuite, but this lady is doing it for me now. I'm in a company that is a for-profit company. I, of course, expect to pay for that. But I think it's about really starting to look at what is the strategy, the digital strategy behind your charity, look at what the roles are, and then go out and find the people who could volunteer to give you those skills, or go out and get them.
Yeah, that all sounds great. When thinking about platforms, I mean, you mentioned all these different platforms. I'm really familiar with Hootsuite as well. It's a really good tool, but there's so many platforms out there at the minute. Like, how can a digital leader in a charity sort of decipher which is best for them? So just to build on kind of a question we've had from one of our audience members, he's asking what's the difference between WhatsApp and Slack when it comes to productivity.
I'm staring at that question and terrified of it. So I think Slack, so WhatsApp, you really have to see that as like you can have up to 256 people in a WhatsApp group. I don't know why they limited it. Like Facebook, you can have 5,000 friends. LinkedIn, you can have 30,000 friends. And WhatsApp, you can have 256 people join a WhatsApp group, which is more than enough for most charities in terms of the way you use it. I mean, I belong to probably about 50 WhatsApp groups, which would make some people horrified. But they're all relevant to the different projects and different clients and different things that I belong to. And you can create as many WhatsApp groups as you want as a charity. And it really is about the communication. WhatsApp is a communication tool. I don't know Slack very well. In fact, I'd love Patrick to tell me what he knows about Slack. I hear about it and I've seen people talking about it. I think it's a little bit more detailed in the way that it can manage information and projects. That's what I understand about it. I bet if we Googled it, there'd be a good answer.
Yeah, I think we use Slack here as well, and I think to touch on your point about building communities and nurturing communities, I think for that aspect of it and managing large groups of people, I think WhatsApp offers you a more handheld version of what exactly that is, where Slack has the whole project management side of it as well. So there's that scope.
Yeah.
I was going to jump into Sarah Crick's question here. Is what cloud-based accounting software would you recommend for a small charity? I mean, that's kind of building on the conversation, the question we've just had in terms of there is a saturation of products out there.
Yeah.
But from your experience, is there one that's been better than the other?
Yeah, so Xero actually is the one I use. Xero is very good for the small organizational teams. Even Xero would say that if you get really large, you might want to go onto a QuickBooks or a Sage type of software. But Xero it's phenomenally user friendly. And so if you're just tracking expenses and raising invoices and even PAYE and things like that, it's very, very good. And it has enough of a dashboard for you to be able to monitor the business performance. And I think it's very good. I would recommend Xero. I also like them as a company. They're a very engaged company. They care a lot. I've interviewed actually Gary Turner, who's the CEO, and he's a good man. He's a really good man. So yeah, I would recommend Xero.
There's a lot to be said for brand loyalty, that's for sure.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? Yeah. Hope they know I've just done that for them.
Yeah, right. So I want to deep dive into the sort of marketing and branding aspect, and I suppose that's a bit,
yeah,
that's my wheelhouse as well. So I might be slightly biased towards that. You mentioned using social media to really grow and engage, but I was wondering if there's any other digital tools that digital leaders that are just starting to embrace, charity leaders that are just starting to embrace the digital world can look to as well, that can really help to extend their reach a little bit, start the sort of formation of a community.
Yeah, well, outside of the main four, are you saying, or?
Yeah, is there anything else that we can use from a digital standpoint?
Well, I think it depends. It depends what the task is, what's the outcome you're wanting. So I mean, I can't personally think of anything else better than Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn in terms of the audience that you've got there. To me, they perform like towns or cities now. And so, if you go into LinkedIn, you've got a wide group of people in the same way with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So that's like going to a very large town. You might, to me, setting up your own group is like owning your own cafe in that town, where you create the culture. And in there, as part of that funnel, when you look at that funnel, and I said, follow me, when you get people into your own group, then you've got people who are really engaged. It's not it's not everybody walking down the street. It's people that have actually stepped off the street and come into your cafe and they're already a fan. But, I'm sure a lot of your charities already use things like Eventbrite, which is a very powerful tool. But I think when I see people using these broadcasting tools of Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn and Instagram, they literally are using it to broadcast. They're not using it for conversation. And I think that is the missing piece in why people often don't see the results of it. So the metaphor I give that is, if I was living in a town and I opened the door of a cafe, and rather than going in and ordering a coffee and smiling at the people around me and getting into a conversation, if I literally just opened the door and shouted through the door or threw a leaflet on the floor and ran out, I am not going to be successful. I'm just a taker, and people are just not going to even notice me. People haven't got time for that form of marketing to try and engage with you if you're not interested in engaging with them. So I think the missing link for me is a lot of people have set up all of these ways to broadcast, and they are forgetting conversation. And conversation is where results happen. Without doubt, you really have to look at at the world as you look offline, look at it online. If you went networking offline and all you did was throw your business card at people, nobody's going to be interested in you. You have to engage, and not only engage in what you want to engage in, but also show interest in other people. That's really critical. There's a great story when Twitter started. I think it's 12 years old now, Twitter, which is quite phenomenal. But there was a great story when Twitter started. It was a young girl, I think she was about 14, sitting in her bedroom, started following the hashtag depressed. And when anybody said depressed, she had an alert that came up that told them they'd said it. And she just started to send them happy messages and loving messages. And she grew her Twitter following phenomenally. You've just got to really deeply care, have the right hashtag, and engage. That's so important. And I would say the big four, the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you use them in different ways. LinkedIn is probably where you'll be able to get a lot of your sponsors. Facebook's where you might get a lot of the people that spread your message and attend events, for example. You've got to understand the culture of the different platforms.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. Well made there, Penny. Thanks for that. That moves nicely into Chrissy's question. That she likes your idea. I like your idea of creating a unique hashtag. If it's really close to an existing hashtag, is it better to just join that group, or should you still try and pave your own way?
I'd do both, because it's the same as me saying when I go into the pub on Sunday lunchtime, I might go because I want to start a conversation about a holiday I'm going to and ask people questions about whether they think that's a good resort. But equally, I'm willing to join somebody else's conversation and get enriched by that. So if there is a very powerful hashtag, that's getting a lot of traction. Join it, but don't hijack it. So it wouldn't have been very ethical as a charity to hijack a charity, say like Comic Relief, while that was on. If you'd gone in and said, you know, screw what Comic Relief are doing, please put your money into my charity, you wouldn't have been very popular. But actually joining that hashtag and getting engaged and making friends inside that hashtag would have been really powerful, because you might have got more followers because you'd shown you'd cared. And your followers are really a really big asset in an organization. I call it social capital, which I'm sure a lot of people know. That's not a new term. That's been around for millennials, I think. It's you know, the social, you've got your financial capital in a business, but your social capital is how many people know of you, like you, and follow you. And you really should be measuring that. To me, it really is a proper metric inside the success of an organization. And about 4 years ago, I remember a PLC reporting on their annual return to their shareholders, how many followers they had and how much engagement they had with them. It's a critical asset in an organization.
Yes, definitely. 100% agree. So as a follow-up to that, I mean, you, as I sort of say, we're a charity that's adopted digital to a certain extent. You know, we've started to you know, grow our presence on social media. We're starting to get people engaged. How do we convert that engagement into community? Because I feel like that's two very similar but two very different things at the same time. There's a transition period in you know, a skill set and actions needed to be taken. How could a digital leader in a charity, you know, transition that from engagement to a nurtured, thriving community?
So I think you have to think about this, that if you imagine some people will go out and fish, and some people will say, no, I'm actually going to become a honeypot. People will come to me. So I would personally prefer to be the honeypot and the bees flock to my honey, rather than having to pick up a fishing rod every day and go out and fish. And what you want to do, the more you create a powerful message that speaks to your audience, and a brand that isn't about you, but is about them, and communicates that effectively, the more powerful your engagement will be, and the bigger your honeypot will be. And so if we use the metaphor of the high street again, you know, lots of people might pop in and out of a charity shop to drop off clothes or buy a shirt or something. But how many of them are actually committed to fundraising or working behind the counter? It's a different level of engagement. Those people have become really deeply engaged in it. And I imagine anybody that truly volunteers for an organization has got their own story behind them. And we see this, you know, we'll see it in April in the marathon. Everybody that's running has got their story. And I think it's about getting people to share their story and encouraging their stories and creating something viral online that makes people feel like their story matters and that they are relevant, and attract them in. Now, when you do that, it's more than just a like or a share. It would be ideal to then bring them into your community. So if you said, right, ideally a high blue in your organization, why don't you set up a Facebook group, and let's target ourselves to get 10 people this week, 20 people the next week, 30 people the next week. And what does it take for your charity to build that level of engagement? And in that community and that Facebook group, I would encourage people to come in and share their story. I often think about, and I'm trying, do you remember the Truth and Reconciliation? This is a bit abstract, but Desmond Tutu did the Truth and Reconciliation in South Africa. And all the appalling things that happened during apartheid, there was no way they could go back and heal and repair houses, bring back people that were killed. And what Desmond Tutu decided to do was to set up a Truth and Reconciliation. And he went village by village across South Africa, opening up the village hall, sitting behind a table with other people, volunteers, and saying to people, if you've had pain, come and tell us about it. And what he did in that incredibly empowering thing is he got people's pain out because they were acknowledged. And acknowledgement is so powerful. And there's a lot of people out there that will have the pain that your charity is trying to heal. So encourage them to come in and acknowledge them and be kind to them. And then you'll have the most powerful community of people that will want to help your charity be successful.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense. I mean, it's all about, connecting on that emotional level.
It is.
To think the same and to be able to to make sure you're all pulling in the same direction. And that's kind of the foundations of a community, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I just want to stay on topic for a second, since we're talking about marketing community, but I promise to those who have submitted questions, I will come back to you. But I just wanted to pick up on Margarita's question, that is, what are your tips to stay up to date with all new things in the digital world? It's so easy to get lost with so many products, and it truly is at the minute. There's, as we were kind of mentioning before, with tools, it's the same as just keeping up to date with trends. What are your tips, your hot tips for that?
My biggest tip around that, Chris, is just be careful not to just get drawn into a trend. I think it's very easy in modern day to get incredibly overwhelmed with all the things you need to do and forgetting how much you already are achieving. And one of the biggest things you need to achieve in life is to keep your own motivation and pace at a level that you can cope with. And the reason it says business is personal at the bottom there is this: I authored this book called Business is Personal. It launched in January, and it's all about my own emotional and mental journey to discovering that I hit an overwhelmed moment, and I had, literally my limbic system of my brain exploded, and it was partly because of the terrible pressure that I felt through the ambitions and the noise that was going on around me, that made me feel I wasn't keeping up. And I couldn't press the stop button. And I ended up being diagnosed with a PTSD and a form of depression called the curse of the strong. And what is really important in a digital world is that we temper this. And if we can just see it as pacing ourselves on a journey, and if we just learned one thing that was going to have an impact on our charity, that would be good. And so the question about how do you keep up is about really having some sense of ownership of yourself and understanding what you're capable of and what you're willing to do. Back to that learning journey, giving the right tasks to the right people, and making sure that you're not just taking it on because other people do. So rather than saying, right, we've got to do social media, we've got to do Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, just choose one and become brilliant at that to start with. Just pace yourself. If you're deciding you want to be a bit more productive, start off by just creating a WhatsApp group and having communication. Just start off beginning the journey of having a digital mindset inside your charity. Once you start that journey, back to that driving journey I showed, where you go from unconscious incompetence, if you just start becoming consciously competent at a few things, you'll start to have the digital mindset, and actually you start to absorb more stuff without it panicking you.
Again, great insight. Thank you, Penny. So to move back into the sort of recruitment productivity side of things, I think we have two questions here that are one and the same. And that's, is there still a need to recruit specialist digital roles or teams, as it seems to be sort of put forward in and around the space that every role within marketing is now digital? So kind of what's the best structure around that?
I think Mark Ritson, it is here, Marketing Week, says, this anonymous attendee has referred to him. I think it's absolutely right. I mean, I launched the Digital Marketing Apprenticeship in 2011 because there wasn't one under a brand called Digital Youth Academy. And that was because in even just that many, 8 years ago, digital was still seen as something freaky and different. It really isn't a specific job now. Everybody does need to be digital. Now, it's very, very hard because I imagine many charities have got volunteers and they are retired people. And I'm not saying that I don't have massive sympathy and empathy with that. But you can't hold yourself back and your charity's growth by the fact that you've got people that love you, but they can't adopt this new way of working. It's too critical for your organization. So somehow those people that aren't willing to adopt digital, find things that are within your charity that don't require it at all. but anything else in your team, I think say for example, for me, if a client says to me, I don't use WhatsApp, I know I'm going to be unproductive with them. And if I'm unproductive, I'm not going to be able to give them the service that I want to give to them. And therefore, we'll both be frustrated. So I'm quite selective now about who I can work with, because I know that it's a part of my value system. It's so important to me. As a charity, being productive and being known is so critical to your survival that you have to bring in volunteers that are willing to learn it, already have those skills. And it isn't a digital job. It is the fact that every single person has to have these now.
Totally. Well, I think that's pretty much it from a question point of view, and from all of us here at Charity Digital News. Huge thank you to Penny, for some super tips on how to embrace digital tech and make it work for you and your team. And thank you to all of you who managed to join us today. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a recording of the webinar along with resources mentioned throughout in the next week or so. We'll also be sending our links to our other webinars from this series as well. If you have any outstanding questions, don't be afraid to reach out to us on social media, Charity Digital News across all platforms. And next week, we'll be building on the back of what Penny has talked about today with regards to social media, as we're joined by Lightful to discuss social media best practices for charity. And how we can gain a better understanding of each social platform to create a stronger online presence. Following that, in April will be Microsoft Skills Month, where we'll host 4 webinars focused on a number of topics, including using technology to bolster collaboration, diversity, and volunteer management. You can head over to charitydigitalnews.co.uk/webinars to sign up, and we hope to see you there. But as far as today is concerned, thank you, Penny, again, and thanks everybody. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.